Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Things That Matter with me, Martie McNabb. If you are new here, or even if you've been here for a long time, bottom line is I absolutely love hearing the stories of the things we keep, the things that matter, and the things that we'll leave behind. I just ended up calculating I have hosted over 400 show and tales over the last 12, 13 years and listened to thousands of stories and have never tired once from hearing these stories. I just, it's sort of like our personal, I'm getting invited into people's homes, like their personal museums through these things that they bring to these events. And speaking of which, that is exactly how I met today's guest. So today's guest is Mary Reilly, and I met her 12, 13 years ago and when I first started Show and Tales. And at that point, it was actually called Show and Tell. I hadn't even changed the name to Show and Tales. It was Show and Tell. And I had been hosting my event for a year or so, I think, in Brooklyn at Branded Saloon in Prospect Heights, Brooklyn. But I had been invited a couple of times to people saying, I just can't get to Brooklyn. Why can't you host some of your events in the city, in Manhattan? And so at that time, I was a member of Quentin's Friends. And I just put out kind of an SOS saying, hey, I've got this event, this story sharing event, like Show and Tell from elementary school, and I would like to bring it to Manhattan. Is there anyone who would, has a place that I could host these events at? And I was thrilled to get two responses, not one. I was blown away that I got even one, but I got two. And one was from Mary Reilly, who was a new co-owner, co-partner of a restaurant called Picnic Market and Cafe on the Upper West Side. And she ended up saying, we've got this space. And of course, I'm looking for off hours that can bring people into a place and support the place and provide, food and drink money and things like that and build their community. So I was looking at off hours, and Mary was like, we'd love to have you kind of in between brunch and dinner or whatever, and reach out to me. And so I did. And we have been fast friends ever since. And we actually call each other Mess, my entrepreneurial sister. And I am grateful to finally, after 3.5 years of this podcast, to finally have her on as my guest. And needless to say, the next section of my episode is always the show and tell section. So without further ado, I'm handing the stage over to you, Mary, and you can take it away.
Thank you so much for having me, Martie. This is such a delight. I've seen quite a few of your episodes, and um, some of your guest themes a little bit overlap because this is really about what matters to us and what we choose to keep. And one of the things that I've been exploring and dabbling in is becoming a digital nomad in my 60s. And I spent a couple of months in Panama last winter. And it's been, I never had a lot of stuff because I never had a large home or married. I had small apartments, but getting down to two giant suitcases and a laptop bag and maybe a tote bag, it's been a challenge. And I haven't quite gotten rid of everything yet, but I finally got everything out of my storage facility on the Jersey Shore where I'm living right now. So I have given some things away to family and friends that I thought that they would appreciate. but certain things I want to hold on to, but I'm very mindful of how much space things take up and, what the actual weight of something is, because I was in the airport coming or going to Panama, and they said that my suitcase was like a half a pound too heavy. So I'm pulling out like a couple of t-shirts and throwing them in the trash. So, t-shirts come and go, but you don't want to be doing that with your important stuff. Um, so this story is also a little bit about my family legacy, uh, in terms of as I've aged, and I've had an unfortunate recurrence of breast cancer, with no metastasis, thank goodness. But right now I have no hair. I'm doing chemo. Um, you kind of think back not only at your family and friends that have been in your life in being, being alive and interacting with you, but I've also thought a lot about my family, and the grandparents that I never met. My father married late in life, and it took my parents 7 years to conceive me. They were going to go to Ireland and adopt twin baby girls. But my mother got the shocking phone call that she was pregnant. And it was a little bit of a miracle because she had a missing ovary. She had had an ovarian cyst, and they took the whole ovary, and she also had endometriosis. So I never met my father's parents. So 3 months before I was born, my father's father had a heart attack. And just to qualify all of this so I don't get in trouble with my family, some of the things that I'm saying, and this is something that's true of all of us, are stories that were passed down and may not entirely be truthful. And I want to write my memoir someday. So I'm very mindful of this because some of what we hear is kind of hearsay and may not be 100% accurate. Um, so I think before my parents got engaged, my grandmother, Mary Moran Reilly, was diagnosed with colon cancer. She had ignored symptoms for like 3 years, bleeding, and said it was hemorrhoids. So at that point, there wasn't too much that they could do. They did an operation and all of that. But my father's parents, all four of my grandparents, maybe had fifth grade educations. And my mother's parents were from Ireland and were very poor. But I grew up with them, which was a blessing. And my father's parents were very entrepreneurial, extremely smart, extremely had a real sense for what was commercially viable and sort of what wasn't. And they went into the hospitality industry. So, fast forward and it's 2012 and I'm becoming a partner in a restaurant. But also, my grandmother married late in life. She was 7 years older than my grandfather. She was kind of a confirmed bachelorette, from what I was told. And she saved her money. She was an operator. She was born in Vermont. She grew up in Vermont. And my grandfather was from Westchester County, where I grew up and my father grew up. And he courted her long distance. And eventually I found, after my parents died, I found some of their love letters, and it was pretty phenomenal. Um, so they had money by the time they opened the first liquor store in Westchester County after Prohibition. They opened a hotel in Vermont. They opened a diner. They opened multiple businesses, and they did very well. And my father and his only sister had the best education money could buy. And, they were basically became upper middle class, if we want to talk about that. But my grandmother was very proud of all of that she had achieved the American dream. So when she was sick, they took a trip around the world, my grandmother and grandfather, and they accumulated gifts to bring back to, family and friends. They were very generous. And my she bought two gifts for my mother, which, as you know, when only sons marry, sometimes there's a little conflict between the mother and the daughter, like maybe she's not good enough for my boy. And, I kind of heard some of those stories because my mother went to secretarial school. She wasn't college educated. I think maybe my grandmother would have preferred a different type of person for my father, more of a career gal. But they went to Japan and they brought she bought for my mother pearls, which I gifted to my nephew and godchild because he's courting a girl now. He really wants to get married, and we have nothing but boys in the family, so we all think he's going to have a girl. And then the other gift that she got for my mother was this aquamarine ring, which I believe is my mother's birthstone. And uh, I chose to keep this because it's smaller than pearls. And in all honesty, when I had more of a corporate career in New York City doing marketing and PR after Columbia Business School, you dressed up for work. I wore the pearls sometimes. I wore them to events. I wore them to interviews. And really, I have no need for them now, and I don't want to lose them. But this is small enough, and it's like a statement ring. So I really kind of like it. But every time I look at it, I'm thinking about my grandmother that I never met. I'm thinking about how we both chose really the hospitality industry at some point in our careers. I was even, as you know, when I moved to the Jersey Shore and wasn't sure what kind of work to do. I worked at an ADT call center, and this grandmother was an operator too, because you could make good money as somebody not well educated if you were reliable and a good worker. Um, and then I think about the importance of the American dream and how, that was very much alive in my family. To be so privileged to have the education that I have with four grandparents who had fourth or fifth grade educations. I went to college, I went to graduate school. I think I'm the first girl, other than nursing school, with some of my cousins who finished college and who went to graduate school. Um, and we have the cancer connection. And the hearsay in my family is I'm 100% Irish American. There's a lot of alcoholism on both sides of my family, an enormous amount. And when you work in the hospitality industry, you're also a bit more at higher risk. So when we met, I believe, when I first became a partner in Picnic Market and Cafe, I became sober because I did not want my business to fail. I wanted to be a good partner, and I wanted to continue my relationship with Tom, my partner at the time, who was not happy with my drinking. And the stories in my family are that she had an issue too. And that may have been why she kind of ignored the signs of cancer potentially. Because when you have a drinking life, you're not always paying attention to really the important stuff. So that, you know, entrepreneurially, however you say it, I'm not nearly as successful as my grandparents, but I broke a cycle of sort of intergenerational trauma in my family. And, many people in my family still drink. And, I think I'm incredibly proud of that because I just think it's incredibly hard and only 10% of people stay sober. And with God's grace and my hard work, I've been sober 13 and a half years. That's a long time. when you start making double digits, you know, it kind of sticks, right? So, and I've never been happier because I can't, I don't hate on people. I would never say so and so is my worst enemy. I wish this, that, or the other thing on them, but living in active addiction is one of the most horrific, darkest places you could possibly be. Um, so, how all of these, with just looking at this ring, how all of these pieces sort of tie together, where I can remember, a grandmother and grandparents that I never even met, and, tie everything together and have my mother in the story too. It's just pretty phenomenal and unbelievable. So
All through that one ring.
I know.
Yeah.
And I really love it. And
Yeah.
I'm glad it still fits me. It's not falling off. I was a little bit worried because obviously I've lost some weight from the chemo,
Yeah.
because I don't want to lose it. So,
Yeah.
so I think by the time I need to think about who I'm going to give it to, um, uh, more children are coming. I have my sister has three sons, really pretty much in their early 30s. One of them has a boy. I have my first great nephew. I think the other boy and his wife are trying, and then Brian, my godchild, is courting a young lady, which I'm hoping that will work out for him. So,
With the
um,
pearls, the guy
we're
that you gave the pearls to, correct?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
the boy that was in the Navy. So he has the pearls because we're pretty sure he's going to have a girl. But I also gave him the pearls because out of the three nephews, my sister's children, he was the most attached to my mother.
Mhm.
He felt a spiritual bond with her. Um, he's a very spiritual kid.
Yeah.
Um, and he's almost 30. He's really not a kid. But I'll know, in less than a few years, probably, I'll know if Matthew and his wife Kara have a baby. Maybe Elise and Danny will have a second and it'll be a girl. Who knows? It's like so exciting to me. You
Yeah.
know, these were kids that, I watched on weekends when they were little toddlers and changed their diapers 30 years ago.
Yeah,
And
you were
now
definitely,
they're having children themselves. So
yeah, you were the auntie, you know, like that was a big role, was being um a big influence and a big help in raising children. So,
yeah, that's been a big part of my life story. And my nickname is still Mimi. My sisters even call me Mimi because when the boys were toddlers, they couldn't say Mary. They would just go Mimi, Mimi, Mimi. So now great nephew Danny calls me Mimi, Mimi, Mimi. So
oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And it's interesting, like we've said, as we started this episode, we've known each other for, 12, 13 years. And there's part of your story that I did not know until right now. So
uh,
this is that they were going, that your parents were set to adopt twins in Ireland. Like, I didn't know that. Um, I knew parts of your grandmother's story about the cancer, but like you said, how you've tied your history like together, like that our life stories intersect and weave together. So it's like it is pretty amazing. So, but yes, there's a lot of new stuff I didn't know. Um, yeah, and now I do. So that's the best part of it. And so, without further ado, the next section of our episode is for you to tell the Lookin' listeners a bit more about you and the work that you're doing in the world. And and needless to say, listeners who've been following along on my journey over the last 3.5 years know that I also have this digital nomad life to an extent. And so you have to be thoughtful about, like I say, things that I keep have to have a purpose or a story, or ideally both,
mm,
because we just, it, it's, and it's it's important for me to yeah, to be thoughtful about the things I keep, and also it's being practical about it. So I'm so excited because when we first met, you were definitely not in the digital nomad space, and now you are, and it's a wonderful space, and I'm glad that you're a part of it now, and I can learn from you. So yeah.
There's only so much you can fit in Brooklyn, right? So,
Absolutely, absolutely. So anyway, without further ado, I'm going to let you take it away and let people know a little bit more about you.
um, I actually think you had something to do with this, if I'm not mistaken. You can confirm or deny. So I think, my name is very common, Mary Reilly. It's extremely common. So maryreilly.com is completely not available, unless maybe I paid $20,000 for it, which of course I wouldn't do. But I think you and another one of my friends at two different times were sort of teasing me and said, but Mary, you're not just any Mary Reilly, you're the Mary Reilly. So then I'm like, let me check on, is the Mary Reilly taken or not? So I've been glomming onto the Mary Reilly as my handle on all of social media. And I think I have the website address, but I don't really have a website yet. Um, right now, in terms of making an income, I'm sort of a LinkedIn consultant for some entrepreneurial people. So I do that kind of work. And my name on LinkedIn is Mary Euphemia Reilly, Euphemia Reilly. So you can find me on LinkedIn. On Instagram and other places, I'm the Mary Reilly. My long-term goal, especially being in recovery, is to become a spiritual life coach, and do some work focusing on teaching young people life and coping skills to prevent addiction. Um, I'm actually secretly hoping that RFK Jr. Kind of pivots at some point from vaccine injury and all of that stuff to looking at addiction, since he's in recovery himself from drug and alcohol abuse from his 20s, when, he lost his father, he lost his uncle, and just it's very easy in grief to succumb to, addiction and just kind of give up and not know what to do with your pain. So if I could ever be involved on a larger scale with doing that in schools, in America, or working for him or whatever, I mean, I would love that, because I think so many young people are lost right now, especially given the state of our country, and all of the divisiveness and all of the hatred. And, too many people live on social media. I'm not even on it that much because frankly, I have to work, and frankly, I'm sick. So, you can't be like, this isn't a life. So, and, not having had my own family, helping young people is really important to me.
Yeah, yeah, very important. Yeah, awesome. Fantastic. So yes, yes, yes. The Mary Reilly, you're correct. I think it might have been somebody else who started it, but I second it for sure, because I was just like, there's no question that you are the Mary Reilly. So yeah,
Yeah, sweet. Yeah, I mean, I more was willing to go with it because of my self-effacing kind of humble personality. That people
yes.
who really knew me knew I wouldn't be doing it because of ego. It was more
No.
like fun. It was more like funny.
Yes,
So,
yes, absolutely, absolutely. And all of the contact information, everything that she said will be in, that Mary said will be in the show notes, of course. And so as we close out this episode, I just want to encourage you again, as I always do at the end of every episode, to to remember, even though my podcast and YouTube channel is, or show is called Things That Matter, it is not that I believe things matter. It's the stories that get attached to them that do.
Mhm.
I mean, look at the, decades of stories, the generational stories that are attached to that ring, and that will continue to be passed down, and those stories and that generational um, uh, trauma, but the narrative change, the actually um, changing that narrative, changing that generational, uh, healing the traumas, all through this one gorgeous ring that came back and was delivered to Mary's mom. So
Oh, it was purchased in Brazil. Yeah,
Brazil. Okay,
yeah,
I didn't
Brazil.
know, but it was on the world tour.
Yeah.
And yeah, so yeah, so again, it doesn't. This is obviously an heirloom, but as you know, I always encourage people that none of our things that matter have to be heirlooms. And it's just that they have stories that connect us to the past, to our travels, to our transformations, to our traumas, to everything, our experience. There are the souvenirs of our lives that we surround ourselves with, and the stories matter. So make sure you keep on telling your stories. And thank you so much, Mary, for joining me
Thank
for this
you.
episode of Things That Matter. And I'm excited to, I'm like, 3.5 years. How did this happen? But anyway, we're here now, and I'm so grateful. And oh, as a side note, I hired Mary to do my LinkedIn. I haven't updated it yet, but but she is awesome at that work. I mean, awesome, awesome, awesome. So highly
Thank you.
recommend her for that. Give a little plug. So anyway, without further ado, have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone, and take good care.